Staff to John Howard, and from our news centre, Bruce Hawker, who, as we all know, ran Kevin Rudd's failed bid to regain the leadership in recent weeks. Bruce, I'm not sure if you're going to shake off that tag just yet, but thank you for joining us this afternoon as well. I want to just pick up on the argument Wayne Swan is having with the big miners. Grahame, what do you make of this?
Well, if the Treasurer is to produce a surplus this year or next year, it's thanks to these people. They have laid the golden goose. He ought to be out there kissing their posteriors. And you think, well, the Treasurer really is a grumpy old man at the moment. He doesn't like the rich, he doesn't like the wealthy, he doesn't like anyone who wants to be wealthy. He doesn't like miners. And you think, well, who does he like? And I've always thought, David, when you're a politician, you need in your mind who is the sort of person who is the basic Labor supporter. And I think the Treasurer has decided it is a poor Green union leader. That's the only person that he seems to like. The poor, the Greens, and the union bosses. He doesn't like the union members. So that's it nowadays. We've got a party that represents the poor Green union leaders.
Bruce, is this politics of envy here? What do you make of this?
I don't think it's politics of envy. I don't think he's going to lose too many votes by saying that, billionaires should put in a bit more. And I think there has been a tendency in recent times for certain of the billionaires to really flex their muscle politically. Having said that, there's nothing all that new about that either. I mean, Australian media magnates going back to Keith Murdoch and Frank Packer did exactly the same, and some continue to do the same. So I don't think there's anything that's all that new in what Wayne Swan is saying. I think that when they start donating in huge amounts to the Liberal Party, then that can be a bit of a problem. And we've seen Clive Palmer in the past donating literally hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars to the Liberal Party. So that's an issue from time to time. But none of it, I think, really upsets the apple cart particularly. That's always been my view about it. But having said that, I don't think he's going to lose too much support out in voterland by having a whack at billionaires. I think they're probably fair game, and they probably suspect in their heart of hearts that they are fair game.
Now, Bruce, I said you were at the news centre. I can see there you're in Brisbane. Apologies for that. Can you just clarify for us? I know you left working for the Queensland campaign during the leadership stoush federally. Are you back on the Queensland campaign there now?
Yeah, for my sins, I am, David, and obviously Clive Palmer is a man who's featured large in Queensland campaigns, certainly in the past when he's donated massive amounts to the coalition, and that creates a sense of unease, I think, in the public. So I think when they are big and brazen about the way in which they go about doing these things, it can create a sense of disquiet. And that's been a case, I think, in the past with Clive Palmer. Although in recent days he's been more obsessed with soccer, I think, than politics.
Well, that's true. That's true. Now, Bruce, you also, of course, were Chief of Staff to Bob Carr years ago. He's now to become our Foreign Minister. What about this suggestion that it shows there was no one in the actual caucus that could be selected? I mean, there in Queensland, Labor's been pretty critical of the LNP going with an outsider in Campbell Newman. What does it say about federal Labor that Julia Gillard's had to go with an outsider?
Well, I think it says that federal Labor is doing what I think it should always do, and that is keep bringing the talent into the party. Now, no one can argue that Bob Carr is anything other than a giant when it comes to intellectual capacity and an ability to sell a message. And this, I think, is one of the great skills that he's going to bring to the table. And I don't think too many people inside the federal caucus are going to be upset about that. Obviously, there are going to be some people who see another person coming from outside as upsetting, their ambitions. But frankly, as a great communicator, as somebody who's seen it all go around so many times before, he'll be a fantastic asset to that cabinet table. I think that in many ways is where his real value is going to come to the Gillard government.
We saw the new team sworn in today, Grahame, and the new faces in the ministry, as well as those promoted into cabinet and other roles. What do you think of this lineup? Has Julia Gillard done a good job, and in particular getting Bob Carr, a show of strength on her part?
Look, parts of it were all right. The business community is happy with a few of the changes, like bringing in people like Bernie Ripoll and whatnot, because there was nobody much that the business community could talk to. The Bob Carr one, Bob Carr will do quite a good job, I think, in foreign affairs. He is well read, he understands the game, he understands politics. But, gee, if I were one of the Prime Minister's colleagues, I'd be saying, you know, do you really think so little of me that you've got to go outside the system? And you think, well, you know, but what I've also noticed already is that, you know, we used to have a foreign minister, blonde-headed fellow with glasses, I forget his name, but he's gone already. Nobody cares. It's all about what's an interesting
point,
Bob Carr think?
Bruce. I should ask you on this, because I had a cabinet minister point out to me that what this will do, putting in someone of the calibre of Bob Carr, is mean that Kevin Rudd won't be missed in the way that Paul Keating was when he went to the backbench after being a treasurer in the Hawke government, and he was certainly missed, and that brought about the second challenge. What do you think this does in terms of missing Kevin Rudd or otherwise?
Well, I thought it was actually a pretty clever move to get him in there. I think it was a bit clumsy in the way in which it happened, but you know, at the end of the day, you had somebody with a great presence, and the way in which he managed the media with his first interview with the Prime Minister and subsequent ones, I think people thought, oh, gee, we missed him. You know, he really is a man of great capacity. He can make fun of himself. He can really go out there and we feel comfortably represent Australia on the international stage. Mind you, I think Stephen Smith would have done a pretty good job of it as well. But he is somebody who would come close to Kevin Rudd in his capacity to do those things well. I mean, I think Kevin Rudd was, you know, way and above beyond, you know, the call of duty, a fantastic foreign minister, and his reputation overseas is just completely undiminished. But, you know, in Bob Carr, I think the Australian public would say, I feel very comfortable with him representing our interests, whether it be in Washington or New York or in you know, wherever he goes in China.
At the end of the day, given Julia Gillard got what she wanted there in Bob Carr, do you think that enhances her authority, her grip on the leadership?
I think it did, ultimately. I think it looked a bit wobbly in the first day or so, and I don't think anyone would argue with that. But the fact that she prevailed in the end and got the man that she wanted for that job, I think created a real circuit breaker for her in what could have otherwise been a rather difficult end to a very unhappy week.
And just a quick one finally to you, Grahame Morris. Tony Abbott over the weekend, he was at the LNP launch in Queensland, and he referred to the fact that he is going to be the next elected Prime Minister. There's been some criticism of that. Is he getting ahead of himself? Is this the sort of thing opposition leaders should avoid saying?
Well, not when you had a look at what he was saying. He was saying, look, the next Prime Minister of this country is likely to be Bill Shorten or, you know, somebody else. Maybe Bob Carr gets a Guernsey now. But it's unlikely that the Prime Minister will keep going right to the next election. He's saying, I will probably be the next elected Prime Minister, but there might be a couple beforehand. Look, the way it was cut, yeah, you could see the Labor Party using that. But I tell you what, it's nothing like all the commercials that the Liberal Party will be using from the Labor Party stoush over the last week or so. Thanks, Bruce.
That's probably right. Look, we'll catch up with you next week. Grahame Morris, Bruce Hawker, thanks for that. After the break, we're going to look a bit closer at the Queensland election campaign. Less than